This happened when I was back in elementary school. A strange experience that stayed with me. At the time, I shared a bunk bed with my older sister. She slept on the top bunk and I had the bottom. Why is it that the oldest always gets the top bunk? But my sister had this habit of tossing and turning in her sleep. Terrible sleeping posture. Her arms or legs would often flop over the side railings in the middle of the night, dangling right in my line of sight. It scared the hell out of me when I was little. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and in that dim, grainy darkness I'd see a pale arm or a leg hanging down from the top bunk, and in the silence of the night, lit only by the moonlight seeping in through the curtains, it felt more like a horror scene than a shared bedroom. But eventually, I got used to it. You'd be surprised at what you can get used to when you don't have a choice. After a while, even when I saw her arm dangling, I'd just roll my eyes and think, ugh, again? And then turn over and go back to sleep. Although one night, something different happened. I woke up for some reason, and there, above me, right above my head, I saw a hand hanging down. That was unusual. Her limbs normally dangled from the side rails, not directly overhead. Something about it just felt weird. Maybe it was how still the hand was, not swaying or twitching like it usually did when she shifted in her sleep. Or maybe it was the shape. Long fingers, stiff posture. Still half asleep and acting on impulse, or maybe childish mischief. I reached up and I grabbed it. I tugged on the hand, just a little. Not too hard. Just enough to try and freak her out a bit. I was fully expecting her to bolt upright with a yelp. That's what I wanted. That was the whole point. But before that could happen, I heard a soft grunt from somewhere else. And I looked to the side, and there was my sister lying on the bedroom floor. She must have fallen from the top bunk at some point. She had done it once or twice before. Our bunk, by the way, wasn't massively tall, so I wasn't that worried about her being injured. I was too stunned to react. I stared at her. Her body was sprawled out, and then the thought hit me, like an avalanche of ice. Whose hand am I holding? That was all I could think of before the hand jerked free from my grip, and then grabbed my arm hard. It latched onto my forearm, somewhere between my wrist and my elbow, not just grabbing me, but it clamped down, fingers digging into my skin like it wanted to pull me somewhere, and then it did. It pulled upward, hard, and I screamed. I screamed so loud that my voice cracked, flailing as my body started to lift from the mattress. I twisted, managing to grab one of the bed rails with my free arm, clutching it like my life depended on it, because it did. And in my panic, I felt the grip tighten. I kicked, I thrashed, I did everything I could to resist whatever was trying to drag me to who knows where, but at least up above. And that's when my sister woke up. She saw me flailing and screaming, and she saw the hand too. She screamed, and then for some reason she started slapping me over and over, screaming as if that would make it stop. Everything was chaos. Screams, flailing limbs, the bunk bed rattling like it was gonna collapse, and then, just as our parents burst into the room shouting, the hand disappeared. Just like that. Gone. It vanished into the shadows above. When the lights came on, there was nothing there. Just the underside of the top bunk. Our parents were furious, said we were making it up, or having a nightmare, said they didn't see any hand. And maybe they didn't, but we did. And after that, we kept using the same bunk bed. But fortunately, nothing else ever happened. Every now and then, when her arm flopped down, again in the middle of the night, I'd reach up and tug on it, and it would always be her hand. I guess that I just wanted to check that she was still there. Each time my hand clasped something warm, human, real. But I never forgot that night, that cold, clammy hand, the weight of its grip, the strength that it had behind it. And to this day, I have no idea what it was, and I have no intention to find out. This story starts with a guy waking up in the middle of the night in his quiet, empty apartment. He gets out of bed, walks over to the window and opens the curtain, and what he sees across the way seems normal at first. But what he doesn't realize is that he's already being watched, and by the time he figures it out, she's already at his door. This happened years ago, back when the storyteller lived in one of those old Japanese apartment complexes, big concrete buildings with rows of identical windows and stairwells that echo late at night. One night, deep into the early hours of the morning, he woke up. He wasn't sure why. No sounds, no dreams, nothing strange, just that eerie, middle-of-the-night stillness. He got out of bed, shuffled over to the window, and casually opened the curtain. Directly across from his unit was the stairwell landing of the opposite building. And standing there, right on the landing, was a woman. She looked like a nurse to him. White uniform, small cap on her head, arms at her side. She was facing the stairs like she was lost in thought, just standing there in the dark. He didn't think much of it at first, probably someone heading home after a night shift. He actually felt kind of bad for her. She looked like she was exhausted. He turned away, about to go make some coffee, when something tugged at the edge of his mind, a detail, something that didn't actually sit quite right. The railing on that stairwell, he'd looked at it 100 times before. It usually came up to about chest height for a normal adult, so around 160 to 170 centimeters tall, maybe 5'2", that kind of height. But when he looked at the nurse, he'd seen her waist. Not just her chest, but her waist, which meant she wasn't average height. She was tall, like really tall. At least 190 centimeters, maybe taller, 6'2", something like that. Now feeling uneasy, he went back to the window and he peeked outside again. And this time, she wasn't facing the stairs anymore. She was staring directly at him. And she was smiling, this huge, unnatural, teeth-baring grin that stretched just a little too wide, like she knew he'd figured it out. He panicked, and he yanked the curtains shut. He stood there in silence, trying to process what he'd seen, and then suddenly, the door buzzer goes off, and he freezes. His heart dropped into his stomach, and there's just no way. There's no way that she could have crossed the distance that fast. She'd have to exit her building, cross the courtyard, then enter his complex, find his door, all in a matter of seconds. Trying to steady himself, he crept towards the door and he peeked through the peephole. And he nearly collapsed because standing right outside was that nurse he saw. She had her back to the door, but she was hunched over, her spine bending like it wasn't built for a human body. Her shoulders were curled in, her head low, her whole body just seemed wrong. He backed away, heart pounding, and then he ran for the balcony. He yanked the curtains open again and looked across the way and saw nothing, empty. No one was on the landing. Whoever she was, whatever she wasn't over there anymore. She was here. In full panic, he climbed over the railing and he jumped from the 3rd floor. He hit the ground, rolled, and sprinted through the dark to a friend's place. And he didn't go home until sunrise. And when he did, he found his apartment was quiet. There was no sign of forced entry, no damage to the walls or the door, no tall nurse, no anything. And here's the thing that still messes with his head. He assumed that she was a nurse because of what she was wearing, especially that white cap on her head. But no matter how hard he tries, he cannot remember her face. Only that smile. Excuse me for the sudden post. So, at the start of this year, I moved into a new place. Right now, I'm living with a friend. It's just the two of us, sharing a small apartment. It's got 2 6 tatami rooms, a little kitchen, a bathroom, and a toilet. Simple, nothing fancy. My roommate is a friend from work. We work at the same company, but our shifts, they don't overlap. I work the day shift, he works the night shift. So unless it's our day off, we see each other for maybe 2-3 hours in between coming and going. Most days we just pass each other by. About a week after moving in, something strange happened. It was at night. I remember that clearly. I heard these creaking sounds coming from my roommate's room. Not random house settling sounds, but steady rhythmic creaks like footsteps. It honestly sounded like someone was walking around inside there. But I knew that he was out. He was on the night shift that evening. He wasn't supposed to be home. Thinking maybe I'd misremembered that he had a day off or something, I crept over and peeked into his room. But there was no one there. And as soon as I looked inside, the sound abruptly stopped. I went back to my room, trying to shake it off as if nothing happened. But then after a little while, creak, creak, that sound started up again, coming from his room. From then on, it became routine. Pretty much every night my roommate was working the night shift, I'd hear those creaks coming from his room. Always at night, always when he wasn't home. And always that same pattern. If I got up to check, the sound would stop. Then, after I returned to my room, it would start again. It never escalated into anything worse. No sleep paralysis, no sudden illnesses, no aggressive cold spots or flickering lights, just the sound. Eventually I told my roommate about it. He's not great with that kind of thing, ghost stories, creepy stuff. He doesn't handle that very well. So the moment I brought it up, he got visibly uncomfortable, spooked out. And then he asked me, he begged me to switch rooms with him. He even offered to pay half of my rent for 2 months if I agreed. Honestly, I wasn't thrilled about it. But 2 months rent-free? I said yeah, why not? I was planning a trip, so I needed the cash. So we switched rooms. And the first night, in the new room, his old room, I was completely on edge. I tried to act normal, but truth be told, I was jumpy. Every little creak in the building made my heart race. I kept thinking, if something shows up tonight, I'm not ready for it. But when the night got quiet, I heard it. Creak, creak. Only this time, it wasn't coming from the room I was in. It was coming from the other room. My old room. Just like before, I went to go check it out. And it was the same result. The moment I opened the door, the sound stopped. And that's when something inside me snapped a little. It felt like whatever this was just messing with me. Not haunting, but mocking, playing some kind of game. So when that sound started up again, I didn't go to the room. Instead, I stood there and I slammed my fist against the wall between our 2 rooms. Bam! And the second I hit it, from the other side I heard a deafening bang, like someone or something had pounded back hard. So hard it made the whole wall shudder. And at that exact moment, this chill ran straight down my spine. It was like my entire back had been splashed with ice-cold water. Without thinking, I legged it. I ran out of that apartment and I didn't stop until I got to the nearest convenience store. I stayed there until morning, just wandering the aisles, drinking canned coffee, trying not to look out of the windows because I felt I might see something I didn't want to see if I looked out. When I finally went home at dawn, everything seemed normal. The rooms were just as we left them. No dents or cracks on the walls. No signs anything had happened. But ever since then, the sounds, they haven't stopped. We still live in that apartment. We can't really afford anything better right now. Rent's cheap and, money's tight. But the creaking is still there. Always at night, sometimes from his room, sometimes from mine. And I still don't know who or what is making that sound. I don't know if it's something trying to reach me, or if it was always after him. Or if it doesn't care which one of us it gets. I don't know if it wants anything at all. I don't know if I'm losing my mind, if I've become completely paranoid over nothing, house sounds. And that's the part that gets me the most. It's not that it's dangerous. Not yet. I mean, there's no harm. None of us has had any injuries or sicknesses. There's not a scratch on either of us. But the fact that it's there, and I know that it's there, night after night, without reason, without meaning, that's what makes it terrifying. And sometimes I wonder, could it be waiting? Could it be planning something? Or maybe we're already part of it. And we just don't know it yet. This story happened to a woman living in an apartment complex in Japan, specifically on the 5th floor. 2 months before the incident, she and her husband had moved into their new place. It was a quiet building, tucked into the kind of residential neighborhood where you don't expect anything bad to happen. The kind of place where the loudest thing at night is usually the hum of your refrigerator. One evening around dinner time, her husband got a call from a friend who lived nearby, one of his usual drinking buddies. They invited him out, and she agreed to drive him to the meeting spot. Their child had fallen asleep in the car on the way home, so when she returned to their building, she carried her child up in her arms all 5 flights of stairs to their unit. It was exhausting, but she made it, got her kid to bed, and got herself ready for sleep. Later that night, her husband texted, said he was going to crash at his friend's place, and he'd be back in the morning. So, alone in the apartment, she turned off the lights and went to bed. That should have been the end of her night. But then she woke up to the sound of the doorbell. At first, it didn't register because she was still groggy, barely conscious when she heard it. And then she heard it again and again. And still half asleep, she sat up in bed, confused. What time is it? Who the hell would be ringing the bell at this time? And she checked the clock, and it was around 2:30. Her stomach sank. She thought, well, maybe it's my husband. Maybe he changed his mind and came home early. Still, she didn't feel it was right to turn the lights on. Something told her not to. Instead, she crept towards the living room in the dark and slowly opened the door leading to the entryway. And then she stopped in her tracks, because the entryway wasn't dark, it was glowing. A faint light, just enough to see silhouette, was shining through the doorway. But she hadn't turned the lights on. And that light was coming from outside. And worse, the front door was already open, wide enough that the light from the hallway flooded into the entryway. And standing just outside, blocked by the bright backlight, was someone. She couldn't make out the face, but she could hear them all right, muttering, garbled, incoherent words, sounding like slurred nonsense, or maybe not human at all. In that moment, she completely panicked. Her mind raced. Did I forget to lock the door when I came home? Did I leave the key in the door? She couldn't see their face, but she could see what they were doing. The person was fiddling with the door chain, trying to unhook it from the inside. If it hadn't been for that chain, they would have already been inside the apartment. She stood there frozen in the dark, watching through the crack in the living room door. Her heart was thudding so loudly, it seemed to hurt her chest. And then just as suddenly as it started, the door shut. Click. Silence. What? What just happened? She didn't move. She barely breathed. And then it started again. It got faster. The doorbell was being rung non-stop, like someone was slamming their hand into the button over and over without letting up. Then she thought, wait, maybe it is my husband. He has a key. That's why the door opened, right? Maybe he's drunk and He's trying to mess with me or he can't get in. So, trying to calm herself, she slowly approached the door and looked through the peephole. And she saw that no one was there. She stared. The doorbell kept ringing, but there was no one there on the other side. Just an empty hallway. No shadows, no feet, no movement, just sound. Like the doorbell itself had come to life, or had been jammed or something. And then finally, it stopped. Everything went quiet. She backed away slowly, turned, and ran back to the bedroom. She threw herself into the futon, pulled the blankets over her head, and tried her best to disappear. But she didn't sleep. She just lay there, her body tense, staring at the wall, listening for anything. The door never opened again. The doorbell never rang again. The hallway stayed silent that night. And eventually the sun came up, and her husband came home just as he said he would. Completely normal. She asked him if he came back at all during the night. He said no. He never left his friend's place. So, who opened the door? Who stood there muttering in the light? And how did the doorbell ring over and over when no one was there? To this day, she doesn't know. The guy who shared this story isn't the type that you'd call superstitious. He doesn't have any kind of spiritual sensitivity. He doesn't go to shrines, doesn't carry lucky charms, none of that. In fact, he admits he's a total coward when it comes to scary stuff. But like a lot of people, he can't help himself. Every now and then he finds himself watching creepy ghost videos on the internet. Not because he enjoys it, more because it's like he's chasing the thrill. That rush of fear right before the regret sets in. And every single time, the same thing happens. As soon as the video ends, he feels it, a presence right beside him. He always whips around in a panic, heart pounding, half expecting to see something standing in the corner of his room. But there's never anything there. It never goes further than that. Until one night, everything changes. It's late. It's well past midnight. The outside world is completely still. No cars, no voices, just a deep, uncanny silence that only comes during the dead of night. He's in his room, sitting at his desk, hunched in front of his PC, watching yet another creepy video, alone, lights on, shivering a little, but telling himself it's just a dumb clip. And then, black. The monitor cuts out. The lights in his room snap off. Everything goes dark. Instant, total darkness. The guy jumps so hard that he nearly falls out of his chair. For a few seconds, he just sits there, frozen, thinking, Was that something paranormal? Did something just cut the power? The PC's dead. The room's pitch black. No sound, no flicker of electricity. Terrified, but trying his best not to completely lose it, he takes a few slow breaths, then cautiously leaves his room. He steps into the hallway, which is even darker. Then he creeps forward, barefoot, every board creaking underfoot, until he reaches the breaker panel in his washroom. He opens the panel. There it is. There's the answer. It's just a tripped breaker. He flips it back and the lights come on, and he breathes this huge sigh of relief. Okay, I can wrap my head around this. It's just a power thing. It's nothing supernatural. I'm fine. He tells himself that over and over. And then he decides, alright, let's go pee. And then go to bed. And then no more scary videos tonight. So he turns to leave the washroom. And again he freezes. Because, for the life of him, he believes that there is something right behind him. Right at the entrance to the washroom. He doesn't hear it. He doesn't see it. But he does feel it. A presence. And not just like before, not some vague, creepy sensation. This one's heavy. So heavy. It's like the pressure underwater when you're drowning in the middle of the ocean. A fear so strong it doesn't tell you to run, it tells you it's already too late for you. He can't move. He's suffocated by this presence. He can't think. He's just stuck there. His muscles are locked, and his mind is just blank. And then, crack, a sudden sharp noise behind him, like a board snapping, or the sound a house makes when it settles, but that's a huge stretch. It just doesn't feel right. It's wrong. The snap somehow jolts him back to reality, and he forgets all about going to the bathroom. But he turns and he sprints back to his room, like something's chasing him. He throws himself into bed and he pulls the blankets over his body, and he's lying there, curled up tight, shaking. All he can hear is the ticking of his wall clock, second by second. Tick, tick, tick. And every tick just makes the silence feel louder. And then sometime later, he doesn't know how long, but there's a noise out of nowhere. Not a creak, not a thump. It's like a button. It's like the sound a button makes when you press it. A click, but long drawn out, like something's holding it down. That sound makes his heart skip. He lies there, gripping his blanket. And then finally, somehow, he manages to fall asleep. He wakes up the next morning, and the sun's out. The power's fine. He's safe. Except he kind of wet himself in his sleep. And he drags himself into the washroom to wash his underwear, feeling completely defeated, embarrassed. But then he notices something. That presence from the night before, it's still there. It's still right behind him in the exact same spot as last night. That same feeling, like it never left. He tries his best to keep calm and laugh it off, and he thinks thoughts like, man, I'm still jumpy, huh? Come on, just literally walk past this spot, it can't be anything. He opens the mirror, the bathroom mirror, just a crack to check, and he sees his reflection and nothing behind him. No ghosts, nothing weird, but that feeling still doesn't go away. Normally, if he just looked behind him, then that fear would pass, but not this time. It's still there, looming, getting bigger. His heart starts hammering, like he had just ran a marathon. He tells himself, just look directly behind you, just get it over with, that'll break it. But another voice in his head says, what if it's actually there? And then that thought is so strong, so suffocating that he starts sweating. And then he realizes he's already turned himself around. Without meaning to, his body has moved on its own. He's staring down the hallway, and it looks normal. Just a quiet, empty hallway. But for some reason, he's not relieved. Because that feeling, that crushing, inescapable presence never fades away. And ever since that night, every time he enters the washroom, he feels it. It's always there. Waiting. Watching. Growing. He doesn't know if it's his imagination or something real, but just to be safe, he's put salt in every room of the house, and he carries a protection charm from his local shrine. And whenever he leaves the washroom, he moonwalks out. He's still alive, for now. This happened about 7 or 8 years ago. I had just moved from the countryside to Chiba to start university. I was 19 at the time, young, excited, and a little naive. It was my first time living alone. The apartment was a run-down one-room place, one of those 1K units, just a single room, a small kitchen, and a bathroom. Second floor, no elevator. It was cramped, dusty, the walls were thin enough to hear your neighbors fart, but honestly, I kinda liked it. The place, not the sounds. It felt like mine. And after a good few months, I settled in. I got used to campus life. Even got my first boyfriend. Things were good. And then that's when I noticed my neighbor. She was this really pretty woman, probably in her late 20s, early 30s. She looked like the kind of office worker you'd see in a commercial. Always polite, always quiet. But there was one thing about her apartment that stood out. Right next to the front door was a narrow, frosted glass window, about 70 centimeters wide and about 40 centimeters tall, with these vertical bars across it. It was the kind of window that you'd barely notice, unless you looked closely. And she had it completely covered up with flyers, layer after layer, taped across the glass like she didn't want anyone looking in. She had papered over her own windows. I pointed it out to my boyfriend one day and joked, "What's up with that? Think she's hiding a secret or something?" We laughed and we agreed that next time we saw her, we'd ask. And we did. And her answer changed everything. She said, "Oh yeah, well, I actually feel a little bit awkward about this. Sorry, but I guess it would be wrong if I kept this to myself. But some guy's been trying to peek in through that window. He comes in the middle of the night and he puts his face right up against the glass. He doesn't knock, doesn't say a word. He just stares inside." We were completely horrified when we heard that, and I told her, "Look, my boyfriend is around a lot. If anything happens, just bang on the wall or call out and we'll do our best to come over right away." And she smiled and she thanked us. And after about a month, she was gone. No goodbye, no notice. She just vanished, moved out like she was running. And then something horrible began. It started happening to me. One night I was alone lying on my bed, scrolling on my phone, just trying to fall asleep. And that's when I heard something. A sharp metallic tap at the door. It wasn't a knock, it wasn't the doorbell. It sounded like something hard, metal, lightly hitting the door. I froze. Now keep in mind, this was a tiny apartment. If I left the kitchen door open, I could lie on the bed and see the front door without even getting up. So I turned my head, just slightly, and watched as the door handle slowly started to turn. It was one of those horizontal handles you had to push down to open, and it was moving soundlessly downward, like someone knew what kind of noise it would create. My mind went absolutely blank. I just stared, trying to remember. Did I lock it? Please tell me I locked that door. I had. Well, I was sure I had. Still, I needed to do something, so I reached over, grabbed a shoe, and slammed it against the glass sliding door to the kitchen. It made this horrendous bang, and the door handle immediately stopped moving. Then it slowly lifted back into place, silently. And everything went still. I didn't breathe. Honestly, I held my breath. I didn't move. I didn't even want to blink in that moment. I called the police the next day. They said they'd increase patrols and make a note of it, but that was pretty much it. The second time it happened was about a month later. Again, I was alone. This time there was no slow build-up. There was just a bang, like someone was trying to open the door hard. Like they thought it was unlocked and they were trying to force it. I jumped out of bed and I ran as fast as I could to the peephole. I wanted to get a view of whoever was doing this time, and I saw that there was someone standing there, wearing a bucket hat pulled low over their face. Someone was stood there motionless, just standing there, facing my door. I felt my whole body break out in goosebumps, and I backed away slowly, got on the floor, and I tried to keep my breathing as quiet as possible, but it was hard, and with trembling hands I called the police. You'd think they'd rush over, right? No. They said, "Can you check again? Is the person still out there? Can you describe them?" I really wanted to scream at them. You want me to stick my face near the door again? Are you out of your mind? But seeing little of a choice, I did it anyway. And yeah, The bucket hat guy was still there, in the same position, still standing, waiting. I gave a panicked description and asked them to hurry. There was a police box just 5 minutes away, but they said that my area fell under a different jurisdiction, so it took about 40 minutes for someone to arrive. In the meantime, I called my boyfriend, who sprinted from his job and got there before the police did. And when they finally arrived, we told them everything. And my boyfriend, half laughing, half furious, said, "So, if she was dead when you showed up, would that have gotten your attention?" All they said was, "We'll make a note of it. We'll patrol the area more frequently." And that was that. Until the third time. Well, that was different. My boyfriend was actually with me at the time. We were standing in the kitchen, casually washing the dishes and talking, when suddenly a gust of cold air blew into the room. We both involuntarily shivered. It took a second for us to register what it was. Wait, we didn't open a window, did we? We turned to look, and that's when I saw it. A pair of eyes, right there, staring at us through the window, our kitchen window. On the second floor, where there was only a narrow ledge. There was no balcony out there. We just locked eyes, me and the stranger. 10 seconds, maybe? Felt like a year to me, though. I couldn't speak. My mouth moved, but nothing came out. Let me tell you, if that ever happens to you, you'll understand what true fear is. I tapped my boyfriend's shoulder, and I pointed, and I tried to say something, but the fear just locked my voice up. He saw, and he bolted out of that door, sprinting down the stairs. I followed a few seconds behind, but by the time I reached the hallway, I saw him. The guy. He was already on a mountain bike, pedaling away. He'd been prepared. We looked at the window from outside, and one of the metal bars had been broken. The one thing that was supposed to keep people from looking in, and he'd snapped it. And the worst part? Our bathroom was right next to that window. It was an old apartment. There wasn't exactly a place to get changed other than the bathroom. So every time I stepped out of the shower, I was completely exposed. He'd probably been watching for weeks. We moved out immediately after that. Years passed, and sadly, eventually I broke up with that boyfriend. I graduated, got a job, and life moved on. But one day, not too long ago, I actually bumped into my ex-boyfriend, by chance. We actually had a coffee, caught up, and of course, that weird stalker came up. We laughed about it, and I said stuff like, "Hey, he was probably only watching me after the pretty neighbor moved out." Like it was all some messed up chain reaction. But then my ex suddenly went quiet, and he looked serious, and then he said, "I'm sorry, but there's something I never told you. That night I chased that guy. You know, when he had the bike. I didn't want to scare you, but he had a knife. A long one, like a sashimi knife. I stared at him, opposite the table in the coffee house, and I thought about what could have happened if that door hadn't been locked, if I hadn't hit the glass, if my boyfriend hadn't caught up to him. I thought about it all. That whole area was full of cheap apartments for students, thin doors, no security. Basically, easy targets. Was he a stalker? A pervert? A robber? Or maybe something worse? Something I don't want to mention. I still don't know, but sometimes I lie awake at night thinking about that first sound, that metallic tapping sound, and I wonder, was he tapping the door with that knife my boyfriend saw? Oh, and that building, the one I used to live in, is still there. There's only one thing I can say about the whole thing, and that is, I hope the police did increase their patrols.